Somewhere on your bank statement right now, there's a small charge you barely notice, a few dollars, maybe more, for something you haven't opened in months. You know it's there. You've thought about canceling it. And yet somehow, next month it will charge you again. Why is doing nothing so much easier than doing the one thing you actually want to do? The answer isn't laziness. It's a well-documented psychological bias, and once you understand it, you'll start seeing it everywhere in your financial life, not just in your subscriptions. In 1988, economists William Samuelson and Richard Zeckhauser published research on something they called status quo bias. The core finding was simple. When people are given a set of options, they disproportionately choose to stick with whatever their current situation already is, even when switching would clearly benefit them. Not because the current option is better, because it's current. Does that sound familiar? In one of their experiments, participants were given a hypothetical inheritance and asked to choose how to invest it across a few options. When the money was framed as unassigned, people distributed it fairly evenly, based on their actual preferences. But when the exact same options were framed as an inheritance already invested in one particular way, people overwhelmingly chose to keep it there, even when a different option matched their stated preferences better. The only thing that changed was which option felt like the default. Here's why this matters for that subscription sitting quietly on your statement. The moment you sign up for something, it doesn't just become a service you use, it becomes your status quo. And your brain has a strong, largely unconscious preference for protecting whatever the status quo already is, regardless of whether it's actually serving you. This connects to something you may already recognize from other areas of behavioral economics. Economist Richard Thaler, who we've talked about before, documented a related effect called the endowment effect. Once something is yours, even a subscription you rarely open, you value it slightly more than you would if you were deciding whether to sign up for it fresh today. Canceling doesn't just feel like removing a charge. It feels like giving something up, even when that something is barely being used. But status quo bias alone doesn't fully explain why cancellation specifically feels so much harder than signing up did. For that, we need to talk about a concept popularized by economist Richard Thaler and legal scholar Cass Sunstein in their research on behavioral design. They called it sludge. If a nudge is a small design choice that makes a good decision easier, sludge is the opposite. It's friction deliberately or carelessly built into a process to make an undesirable outcome, from the company's perspective, harder to reach. Think about the last time you signed up for a subscription. It probably took under a minute. One click, maybe two. Now think about the last time you tried to cancel one. A confirmation page, a survey asking why you're leaving, a retention offer. Sometimes a phone call required during specific business hours to a representative trained to keep you subscribed. That asymmetry isn't an accident. Signing up is engineered to be frictionless. Canceling is often engineered to have just enough friction that your status quo bias wins by default. Here's a number worth sitting with. Industry estimates place the global subscription economy at well over $200 billion, spanning streaming, software, meal kits, fitness apps, and dozens of smaller recurring charges most people can't even list off the top of their head. A significant portion of that revenue comes specifically from what the industry sometimes calls passive churn resistance, subscribers who intended to cancel and simply didn't get around to it. So what's actually happening when you tell yourself you'll cancel it later? You're not being irresponsible. You're experiencing status quo bias and the endowment effect working together, reinforced by a small but real dose of sludge specifically designed to exploit both. The subscription isn't winning because it's valuable to you. It's winning because staying subscribed requires zero effort, and canceling requires effort you'll always find a reason to postpone. There's a deeper pattern worth noticing here too. This exact mechanism doesn't only apply to a $10 streaming service. It applies to bank accounts you no longer get the best rate from, insurance plans you never shopped around for again, investment allocations you set up years ago and never revisited even as your life changed completely. Anywhere a decision was made once and never had to be actively defended again, status quo bias is quietly protecting it, whether or not it still deserves that protection. So what actually helps once you can see this clearly? First, Make the invisible visible. Most people underestimate their total subscription spending because each individual charge feels small in isolation. Pulling every recurring charge into one list, even briefly once a quarter, removes the advantage status quo bias relies on, which is that you're not actively looking at the full picture. Second, treat cancellation friction as information, not an obstacle to push through with willpower alone. If a company makes canceling meaningfully harder than signing up, that gap itself tells you something about how much they're counting on your inertia rather than your continued satisfaction. Third, flip the framing you use on yourself. Instead of asking, "Should I cancel this?" ask, "If I didn't already have this, would I sign up for it today, at this price, right now?" That question strips away the endowment effect entirely, because it removes the feeling of losing something and replaces it with a fresh, unbiased choice. Somewhere on your bank statement right now, there's a small charge you barely notice. It's not there because you decided it was worth keeping. It's there because nobody made you decide again. And now you know exactly why that's been enough.